Okay, I am back to finish your integumentary system PowerPoint with you guys. This should go rather quickly. The information left to cover is not super in-depth. Let me find the right thing. Oh, well, all right, we were on slide 32. I had finished all the organs and the accessory organs, okay, of the integumentary system. And now we're going to talk about the functions and then what can go wrong with the integumentary system. So functions: protects against bacteria, abrasion, which is scratching, heat, cold, and chemicals. The protection has three barriers to it. So the first one is chemical. We secrete secretions, sebaceous secretions, which is oil, again, remember, sudoriferous secretions, which is sweat, mostly water with some salt components to it, which gives our skin a slightly acidic pH. And then melanin as a UV blocker. So we do have chemical barriers in our skin. These secretions allow their protection against microbial invasion, among other things. Physically, we have protection due to the hardness of keratinized cells, which blocks diffusion of water-soluble substances, both inside and outside to us. Some substances do penetrate the skin in limited amounts. You can have lipid-soluble molecules such as oxygen, CO2, and fat-soluble vitamins and steroids. Those are things that are probably most likely okay to penetrate through the skin. But then we have things like oleoresins, organic solvents, and heavy metal salts, which can harm us very much if they penetrate through the skin. And so solvents and metals can cause renal shutdown, among other things. Our third one is biological. Our skin has those Langerhans cells, which, are immune response cells. Remember, they're dendritic cells that participate in their immune response. They recognize antigens and deliver foreign substances to lymphocytes. These dermal macrophages are the second in line to defense. Unfortunately, they are activated by sunburns. And so you damage your ability, you weaken your immune responsibilities every time you get sunburn. One of the functions of the skin, so those are the three: biological, chemical, and physical are the three ways that they protect us. Other functions include excretion. Obviously, it's how we excrete water through our sweat, and then some limited amount of waste, mostly function, excreting waste is mostly a function of the urinary system. But sweat is an avenue of sodium chloride loss, so you see things like Gatorade, Powerade, all the aids, things that help replenish electrolytes. They're probably more unhealthy for you than they do good work, but in a pinch, if you've worked out and lost a lot of sweat, you do want to go in and put those sodium chlorides, potassiums back into your body. So like Gatorade's good, but it's also bad. It's very sugary. It's not great for you, but it's also good if you need to replenish electrolytes. Another function, as we know, is thermoregulation. During resting conditions under mild environmental temperatures, so today is a good example, sitting down watching this PowerPoint, your sweat glands secrete about 500 milliliters a day. An increase in body temperature causes that to increase, obviously, causes dermal vessels to dilate, which stimulates sweat glands up to 12 liters a day. Imagine losing 12 liters a day of water and salt and not replenishing it. You would die. You can't do that. That's why you have to drink in hot days and very humid days. You have to drink because you're losing so much through your skin, and you can dehydrate yourself to the point of coma and death. My husband works in waste, right? He's the safety manager of a waste company. When we were dating, I think, back when we were dating, so 7 years ago, he had an employee, brand new employee, second day on the job, I want to say possibly even first day on the job. Midsummer, super hot, he passed out. He was a loader on the back of a trash truck. So he was one of the two guys that ride along in the back, and then they stop and they throw the trash in and they ride along on the back. He wasn't drinking water. He passed out. Unfortunately for him, when he passed out, his head hit concrete, and he actually ended up dying from passing out from dehydration due to that head injury. It was actually not good times for anybody, but especially him and his young family with all of his young children. So all he did was not drink water on a hot day, and he's dead, unfortunately. So you really have to pay attention to this type of, you have to pay attention to how much you're losing on any given day. Evaporation dissipates heat. That's why we sweat typically for thermoregulation, because as water, which you remember from 1406, water has high heat evaporation. Since it takes so much energy to evaporate the water, you actually pull the heat away from the skin as the water evaporates. And this decrease in temperature causes vasoconstriction, which bypasses skin to maintain homeostasis. Another important function of the skin is sensation. Input from, well, cutaneous sensation, but input from the external environment, temperature, pressure, and pain. You have three types of receptors. You have Pacinian corpuscles, Merkel's discs, and free nerve endings. And then you have Messner's corpuscles, Krauss's end bulbs, which I've never heard of, and Ruffini terminals. Oh, and so these three receptors mostly associated with pain and pressure. Messner's corpuscles are also associated with pain, and I have to say I don't know what Krauss and Ruffini do, so you won't be tested on it. Also, your skin is where vitamin D is synthesized, which is used in calcium metabolism, which you need to live. So get your sun, but also get it without getting sunburned, because when we damage our skin, it can potentially lead to greater than 100,000 conditions. Now, most of these are going to be invasion by bacteria, yeast, and viral entities, but some of them are burns, some of them are cancer, some of them are bigger than a microbial event, which, by the way, you know, bacterial, viral, and yeast infections can kill you. It's not like they're tiny things that we don't need to worry about, but typically we can resolve those issues. Burns is caused by intense heat. It does not have to be fire heat. It can be electric, chemical, or radiation heat. I have had, in my lifetime, look at how pale I am, everybody. I have had 2 second-degree sunburns. It puts me at a huge risk for skin cancer. But I mean, I have been so sunburned, I have blistered twice in my life because I didn't learn enough the first time. This is when I was a child and I was stupid. Because I hate sunblock. Honestly, I hate putting on sunblock. Even as an adult, knowing this, knowing everything, I just hate putting it on. But I do now. Like, too little, too late, right? But you can be so sunburned by radiation that you can get a 3rd-degree sunburn. Now, I think that would actually take a lot, but I'm sure that it happens. 2 2nd-degree sunburns. They were awful. Oh, my doctor yelled at me. Oh, it was bad. Sunburns, or any burns, electric, chemical, or radiation, disrupts electrolytes and proteins. Look, remember our question way at the beginning? Why is it so hard to keep a 3rd-degree burn victim alive? Fluid seeps from burned surfaces and causes imbalance and eventually renal shutdown. They leak to death. It's the grossest way I could probably put that. They lose all their fluid. There's nothing holding the fluid in. They just ooze out to death. That's the biggest problem with 3rd-degree burns, because 3rd degree is when you burn the whole layer of skin away, so the dermis and the epidermis. There's no way to keep the fluid in. I have nothing else to say. Fluid loss can be evaluated by the rule of 9s. We'll watch a video about that in a minute. And obviously, you're repairing, if you have a 3rd-degree burn, even over a minor part of your body, or not a minor percentage of your body, you definitely need more calories to aid in repair. And so you have IV solutions that have to be put in to help. And then the second biggest cause of death in burn victims is Pseudomonas aeruginosa, which sounds like a spell from Harry Potter, I know, but it's actually a very aggressive organism that kills quickly, and it's bacterial. And so bacterial and viral damage or invasion due to not having that tissue barrier are the second leading cause of death for burn victims, but fluid loss is the #1 cause. So rule of nines, I'm gonna have to stop share. Haha, I think I remember how to do things. And I'm gonna have to go here, haha. And I'm going to have to, yes. All right, no, I have to stop share again. Sorry, I didn't hit a button. Screen share. Share computer sound. Here's the video, there it is. And here we go. No, yes.
In all burn-related injuries, it is important to estimate the total body surface area burned to determine the severity of the injury. But more importantly, calculating the total body surface area burned helps the practitioner use something like the Parkland formula to calculate a patient's fluid requirements after a significant burn. In order to do this, we use the rule of nines. Looking at this diagram of an adult, you can see why we call it the rule of nines. But let's break it down into something more practical. Taking a look at the head, it is worth 4.5% for the front and the back, or a total of 9%. The torso is worth 18% for the front and another 18% for the back, giving you a total of 36%. The anterior and posterior arm are 4.5% each, for a total of 9% in each arm. The front and back side of each leg is worth 9%, for a total of 18% for each leg. Additionally, the groin area is worth 1%. You could also estimate a small burn area by measuring with a palm, which is equal to 1%. In a pediatric patient, keep in mind that the rule of nines is slightly different. The head in this patient population is much larger, and so it is worth 9% for the front and another 9% for the back, for a total of 18% for the head. The other difference in the rule of nines is in the legs, which is worth 7% for the front and 7% for the back, for a total of 14% for each leg. All other percentages for the rule of nines in a pediatric patient remains the same as in adults. So when a patient comes into your resuscitation bay with extensive burns across the anterior chest, entire abdomen and groin, and burns to the entire surface of the anterior right arm, you could estimate that the total body surface area burned for this patient is approximately 23.5%.
And then, as he said in the video, you use that math, how much of this person is burned, to calculate how much fluid they might need to potentially keep them alive. Some burned areas are more susceptible to disease than others. For example, the groin is only 1% of the calculation, but if you're burned in the groin, it's much more susceptible to disease. So it can cause additional problems. So here we go. So that's the rule of nines. That video is embedded in the PowerPoint. This PowerPoint is up on your Canvas for you to look at if you need to. And then remember the palm. So if it's a small burn, you can just 1, 2, 3%. 3% of this is burned, you know. So there's burns. There's 1, 2, and 3. There's first, second, and third degree burns, and that's, you calculate them by the rule of nines. And then the severity of the burn, first, second, and third, is how deep the burn goes through the tissue layers. So superficial or first degree burns, only the epidermis is damaged. There's redness and swelling and pain. Y'all have done this. We've all had first degree burns. You might have accidentally touched a hot pan. You might have touched a hot iron, a flat iron if you flattened your hair, touched hot water, boiling water, didn't know. One time I was young, but I wasn't too young. I was old enough to do this. I was pouring, you know, soup from a pan into a bowl over the sink appropriately, and the soup splashed on my hand. And so I dropped the bowl and soup went everywhere. But I think my hand was the only part that was damaged. But you know, like soup, you put it under running water. Okay. Superficial burns, by the way, or any type of burns, you don't want to put ice on them. You don't want to obviously put more heat on them. You need them to you want to get the temperature back to body temperature. So it should be mild room temperature water that you put it in. Ice damages burns more. So it should be mild room temperature water, or if it's a really small burn, they suggest just putting it in your mouth to regulate the temperature and get it back to normal body temperature. Yes, it hurts, obviously, because ice also numbs, and so we like that when it comes to pain. But icing is not ideal for a burn. It is, you want to take that heat and bring it back down to body temperature. A superficial is considered a first-degree burn. A second-degree burn is partial thickness. It's epidermis and the superficial dermis. So you've burned the 5 layers of skin, or 4, depending on where you are, stratum basale, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, lucidum if you're in a 5th layer, and then stratum corneum. You have to be able to do that, by the way. And you've started to burn the dermis. You get blisters when those 5 or 4 layers of skin separate from the dermis and fluid fills the area in between. That's what a blister is. So I've had 2 second-degree, my entire shoulders and upper back were blistered. I was a stupid, stupid kid. Don't be like me. Okay, y'all are already older than I was when these happened, but don't be like me. You can recover with little to no scarring. I don't have scars from my blisters, but recovery takes a while. The blisters were there. The one that was really, really bad, I couldn't wear a shirt for a week. I had to put the shirt on and then tuck the sleeves under and have it like a cinch top shirt. I could not have anything on my shoulders. It was awful. Don't be like me. 3rd-degree burn is you burn through the dermis. Epidermis and dermis are gone. Your signs and symptoms are that they're blanched. The skin is blanched. It's gray and white because you have no blood flow. Your skin doesn't have blood flow to it. There's little or no edema because there's nowhere for fluid to accumulate. There is no pain. You've burned away the pain receptors. So, this is a horrible thing to say or think, but if you're burning alive and that's how you die, the pain part of burning alive is actually over fairly quickly because you burn through the receptors so quick. I don't know how long the rest of it takes. Hopefully, if that ever does happen to any of you, which never, it won't, I know this, or anyone you love or anybody you know, even vaguely, hopefully they die from smoke asphyxiation before burning happens. That's what you hope happens, I think. Regeneration is difficult, so you have to graft. You either have to take your skin that's still viable from somewhere off your body. Typically, it's the buttocks or the upper thighs. Unless those are what's burned away, then it's from somewhere else. And you have to graft in because there's nowhere for new skin to grow from. There's no stratum basale to produce new skin in the burned areas on a 3rd-degree burn. So you have to put skin there to grow skin. I know that some burn victims are so severe that they have to get donation grafts, which then you have to go into all the will it match, will the body reject it type of thing. Okay, so you are critical as a burn victim following the rule of 9s if 30% or greater has a partial thickness burn, so a 2nd-degree burn, if 10% of the body has full thickness. 3rd, to face, hands, or feet, burns with respiratory injury, and those are probably more electrical or chemical burns. A lot of chemicals burn. That's how they do their damage in the body. So if you inhale it, it actually burns the trachea, the bronchi, and the lungs. It's a chemical burn. And burns encircling any part of the body. So if you are front and back and all around burned in an area of your body, then you are critical. One more thing about burns before we get into cancer. Shock is also a killer when it comes to burns, which is not Like you can pull somebody out of shock, they can do it, you can do it, but if the shock is severe enough, that can also kill them. So fluid loss, bacterial and microbial invasion or viral invasion, and shock are three of the big things you have to worry about with burns. Cancer. Hey, I've had 2 second-degree sunburns. I wonder when I'm going to get cancer. Not if, but when. My dad has already had superficial skin cancer. So what I mean by that is he has had basal cell carcinoma. It's the least malignant and most common. Thankfully, it's the least malignant. What happens here is that there's no keratin formation in the cells. So you don't get these waterproof cells that are normal for skin. You get this lump of exposed cells with full nuclei and everything. You cut them out, you move on with your life. Or freeze them if they're small enough. My dad just had a new one frozen. They now go to a dermatologist religiously because of my dad's diagnosis with skin cancer. I don't know why I'm telling you all this about my family. My dad didn't think it was cancer. He thought it was a pimple. It was right here on his nose, and it was huge. I mean, not huge. It was, you know, what a pimple would look like, but it'd been there for quite some time, and he kept trying to pop it because you don't, I don't know, think that anything's cancer, I guess, ever. And they came to visit me, which my parents, I mean, we live 2.5 hours apart. I should see them more than I do, but sometimes months go by before I see my family, and this was before a pandemic. So he comes to visit, they're at my house, and I'm just looking at him, and I'm like, Dad, when are you going to get that cancer taken care of? And you should have seen this man's face. He goes, oh, do you think it's cancer? Yeah, I do, actually. And so they went, and it was, and he got it taken care of, thank God. And he has a big old scar, surgical scar on his nose now, but better than cancer. Now, least malignant means that even if he had left the tumor there, most likely nothing would have ever happened. But it can metastasize and become worse. So you don't want that to happen. Squamous cell is fast growing. It's a little bit more malignant. It can metastasize to adjacent lymph nodes. Both of these, the first one and the second one, are sun-induced. It's overexposure to UV radiation. So for squamous cell, you need surgical removal and radiation. And look, this is actually inside the mouth, this tumor is. And then here's one on his shoulder. Oh, I thought there was a third. Oh, there's not. Sorry. So they don't have to, like, that's an epithelial membrane in the mouth. So that's legitimate. Like, they can show up in there. They don't have to show up where it's easy to see. And that's one of the things you have to worry about if you've overexposed yourself to UV radiation. The number one killer in skin cancer is malignant melanoma. Those melanocytes, those ones that actually produce the granules to protect our skin from UV radiation, actually are highly susceptible to UV radiation. I guess I should really worry about this at some point in my life. It's cancer melanocytes, about 1% of cancer cases, rare, but fatal. Some develop from pigmented moles. You get rapid growth from these. The cure is poor, even with early detection. Your prescription is surgery and chemotherapy and prayer, if you're a praying person. So you see this mole here. It is irregular, which means the border is not smooth and around. It is asymmetrical. This side is narrow, this side is large. It is color. The color is uneven. I forget what D. But the reason I'm trying to do this is because there's an A, B, C, D, E rule, or ABCD, if you're in the know about people naming their children A, B, C, D, E. I think it just stops at D, but they pronounce it ABCD. So that's the thing in this world. A is asymmetrical. B is the border. Oh, okay, so two sides of pigmented mole do not match. B is border irregularity, so the border is not smooth. C is color. There's different colors. D is diameter. It grows. It gets larger. And then E is that it's constantly evolving. Sorry, I thought there was. So if we go back, asymmetry, border irregularity, color, diameter, evolving. Go back. You're just going to do this. Okay, so Asymmetrical, clearly. Border, irregular, clearly. Color is different across the mole. Diameter, we don't know because this is a close-up, but we can assume this is bigger than 6 millimeters. And evolving. If they did not do anything to take care of this malignant melanoma, over time it would get larger. It would change shape. Maybe one side will have a larger growth than the other side, but they don't stay the same. It's not like a normal mole that once you notice it, or a freckle even, once you notice it, it's just there and you notice it and it never changes and you're like, that's my freckle for my life. These change. There is another PowerPoint that I stole from some other teacher in the world that is posted in your modules called, I renamed it to Cancer PowerPoint or something like that, that goes more into the ABCD rules because you have an assignment over this. Okay, the final 2 slides are what happens as you are developing in utero, and then what happens as you are aging in life. So in utero, remember, we are deuterostomes, but that's not. Anyway, we have 3 layers of skin, or 3 layers of cells that we evolve from. Ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm. Endoderm being the most inside, ectoderm being the most outside. The epidermis is from the ectoderm, right? That makes sense. At 7 weeks, sorry, I didn't put weeks there, you have a superficial layer called the periderm. So it's not the full epidermis, but it is a layer of skin cells called the periderm. At 5 months, which is 14, 15, 17 weeks, you have sebaceous glands from the dermis. So down here, go down here to dermis from mesoderm. Sebaceous glands are evolved or created during 4 months. Sorry. Sebaceous glands from the dermis, periderm that was created already, and hairs, which would also come from the dermis, all come together and form this vernix caseosa, which is called cheese. It's cheese. It's not cheese. That's gross, but it looks like cheese. What is the vernix? Oh my gosh, sorry. Oh no, what did I? Okay. Vernix caseosa. I have notes down here. Cheese varnish is what it is called. Cheese varnish. So let me go back and share my screen. So at 5 months, you get this cheese varnish. It's a protective thing for the fetus. It's waterproof because of the oil, and it helps protect the fetus in utero. So that comes from the periderm, from the ectoderm, and hair follicles and sebaceous glands from the dermis, from the mesoderm. At 11 weeks, you get an intermediate layer of cells, and then it's 5 months, you get pseudoryphus or sweat glands, and nails at 10 weeks. So it kind of develops a little bit all over the place. It doesn't all develop at once. You don't just get your skin layers. But overall, you get everything eventually by about 5 months. That's interesting. As you age, most changes occur in the proteins of the dermis, right? Because skin cells really aren't a whole lot of anything. The dermis is what gives you, I wish, that smooth, polished look that you all have in your youth that you don't know that you have until you start aging. And you're like, hey, wait a minute, like yesterday I looked better than I do today. Aging happens insidiously. You don't really expect to age, and then all of a sudden you have crow's feet and your skin won't hold moisture anymore, and you're like, what the heck? And this is probably because I'm never fully hydrated like I'm supposed to be. Shh. But also, you just lose that shiny, youthful glow, sadly. What happens is collagen decreases or stiffens and breaks apart, and it becomes disorganized, and that's what causes wrinkles in your skin and sagging of the skin. Like I have this little jowly region here. Like you see old ladies have the jowls and you're like, I'm never gonna have that. No, you get it. Or like this, whatever you call this, flappy stuff down at the bottom of your arm. It happens. You can prevent it from happening. What you can really do is slow down the rate that it happens by exercising and eating right and staying hydrated, but it happens. The elastic fibers lose their elasticity. Your fibroblasts, the cells that create the collagen, And the elastin, they actually diminish. You stop producing so many of them. Your immune response decreases because that's just what happens. You decrease the size of your sebaceous glands, so you produce less oil. Your sweat production decreases. And eventually melanocytes stop functioning. And so like I have gray hair and it doesn't bug me. I think you can actually see it in the camera. It doesn't bug me so much that I have gray hair. I don't really care. I've never been somebody who cares. There are people in the world who really, really care. And so, like my mother, and she still dyes her hair to this day. If she didn't, she would have nearly all white hair at this point, I believe, but she would be completely gray at least. And so it just depends on your level of comfort with aging. Aging happens to all of us. You don't have to like it, but you don't have to be afraid of it. It's actually a good thing that you get to a point where you're aging because it means you've lived at least a good part of your life by that point. Oh, that just means I'm nearly dead at this point, guys. Okay, so that is this PowerPoint. Now that I've depressed myself. And that's the integumentary system. Now let me go in. Let me see. No, rule of nines. Yeah. Let me go in. Now let's end this. And this is not your class. Let me go to you guys real quick. As quickly as it will let me, anyway. Attendance always, blah, 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 blah. Okay. These lectures, the one I did this morning and the one this now, these are lectures part 1 and 2. They can go into, you can watch them for the integumentary system. And here is the PowerPoints. I'm actually going to move them up to the top. Here's the PowerPoint that goes along with lecture 1 and 2. Here's that skin cancer lecture. This is something you can look at on your own, but my lecture and the skin cancer lecture combined will help you with the ABCDs of skin cancer assignment, okay? So it looks like the end of this week we'll finish up integumentary system, and then you'll have to have your first exam, which means you'll have to schedule that, which means you also should have probably had a quiz or 2 by now. And I will have to skip. Well, here's skin and body membranes quiz. So there's one. Have we had another one yet? Or have I just gone insane and made you do everything without really thinking? Oh no, you've had quizzes. Oh, good. I'm not crazy. Okay, so a quiz or 2. And then, yeah, it's about time for your first exam. How exciting. Yay. Okay, thank you all. Let me end this.